Howdy everyone, welcome back to DrawWithLizzie, and today I received my Unit 10 Foundation Level 4 sketchbook, and I got a distinction on it. So I thought I would do a video of a walkthrough of my sketchbook and how to achieve a distinction yourself, because when I was looking online for some help, there wasn't much about foundation sketchbooks online, so I decided to create this video now. So let's get right into it. This is my first Unit 10 sketchbook, and right at the start you can see I have the health and safety and professional practice and exploratory and pathway reviews right at the start, because you need to acknowledge the rules and regulations that we all have to abide by within the building and within general life, to do with like handling scissors appropriately, handling different equipment properly. You can go a bit health and safety mad with all of it, but you have to acknowledge that there are rules and regulations there for a reason. And the pathway and exploratory reviews it can help to acknowledge the amount that your work has adapted over time, how much you have learned over the year, and it helps to summarise how you've grown as an artist or designer over the time period. My focus was on insomnia, so I created a mood board and several mind maps, trying to be very specific and pinpointing where my ideas were going, making sure I knew exactly what I wanted to do so that the project could have a better flow. Contextual research and backing up every single one of your plans and ideas with your own personal investigations is incredibly important in developing a final major project. With this, I looked at other people's sleep habits and how it impacts them, what it changes about their everyday life, including things such as pseudo-hallucinations, which are hallucinations people who are sleep deprived often suffer from. The difference between pseudo-hallucination and a hallucination is the recognition that it's not real, that what you're seeing is not the truth. I also did gallery reviews. It's important to do consistent gallery reviews within the final major project, because it shows that you have an understanding of how artistically the world will work for you in the future, the way that you'll have to set up your work and the rules you'll have to abide by with them, as well as giving you ideas and inspiration for how your own work should be set out when you create your own exhibition at the end of the final major project. One of the artists I looked at was Paula Bonet, or Bonnet, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, and using her style I created my own mini animations, which I will insert here to show you, because a lot of my project was animation based. I continued with the animation and the styling of Paula Bonet for quite a while, because what's important is to develop and redevelop your work. If you have one idea, exploit it for all it's worth, just keep pushing it and pushing it until you're at a point where you are comfortable to stop with it, because that's where the marks are, or in the in-depth understanding that you can show. My second artist is Rhonda Palarazzi, who creates sketchbook and journal pages, and I created my own sleepless journal project, which I will go through in a lot more detail in an individual video. And here you can see I have looked at the way that my mind works when it is sleep deprived and the amount of patterns it creates. And as I create these different pages, I notice that what I want to create is patterns, things that repeat and probably have some sort of symbolism, but frankly I'm not entirely sure what that is. With my own sleepless journal, I decided to begin another investigation of other people's journals when they're half asleep. I asked people to keep them. Obviously not everyone drew the same way I did, a lot of people wrote, but I found that there were still patterns within the writing. I looked at the light research and how light affects sleep, and this led me into investigations of eyes and finally get some more artwork again, with photography and painting and trying to show how the eyes can show sleep deprivation and a lot of raw emotion in a lot of different ways, because eyes are often described as the window to the soul, and the reason for that is that they are so incredibly expressive. You'll be noticing these minutes and checklists appearing, and most of that is because we held meetings for our exhibition, and they were held right from the very beginning, because the exhibition is a long time planning. It's something that takes a lot of effort, and it's better to start sooner rather than later. My third artist was Dinklage, and using his pattern work, which was similar to my own, I created another experiment in which I asked people to interpret out of these images whatever, then tell me what they thought they were. And this was similar to a Rorschach test, which I investigated here and annotated thoroughly. I began looking into mark making technique, and although this is something that you do look into more in depth during exploratory, it's still significant to go back to it within confirmatory in order to show that you have learned how important it is to thoroughly research and practice and get used to a medium before you instigate any kind of final piece. I experimented with makeup and photography because experimenting with a variety of mediums, although more a pathway stage element, is still important to continue to show your own learning and development process. And this led me into deciding to create a book with my pseudo-hallucination characters. Although I very much enjoyed this dark and quite grim story that I was creating, this narrative, my teachers quickly tried to pull me further away from that track because it was less likely to get me the right marks, and it showed me going back into repeated styles that I'd used previously in the pathway and exploratory. They wanted me to keep using something new to show that, you know, I wasn't a one-trick pony. And that is why, even though you see this story that I'm very proud of and animated, I've had to move away from that in the later stages. And that is book 1. And we continue again with book 2, where I continue the animation element of the storybook I was creating, and I will insert these animations here into it as well. You can see all of this on my blog because I put everything online for the examiner to be able to look at it and decide on the grade without having to just go through the sketchbook stills. What's useful about video and digital editing is that it shows a lot of your development work really simply. It means you don't have to lay anything out complicated. You don't have to take pictures of your process every time because you can print screen, making everything fairly simple. Because I had to go in a new direction, I was talking about the peer reviews and the teacher reviews and how that has changed what I had to do based on what an audience would respond to, including different role in the exhibition activities and how much more of a role is being taken in the later stages of the project. Here you can see me contacting artists for interviews and preparing for the exhibition with Facebook group chats and previous exhibition visits. And I have annotated my SOI. The SOI is what you write at the beginning of your final major project in order to show your plans and intentions of the project and what you will be doing and what your final outcome will be. And reviewing and changing it throughout your project is actually quite an important part of showing your learning and ability to understand what you're doing. Creating a program for the exhibition. I was doing different elements of that, but that was mostly down specifically to a graphics team which I set up because my role in the exhibition was as a form of manager and overseer, to make sure everything was organised, to give people deadlines and to sort groups out. As you can see, I have mind mapped a lot throughout this project, and it's to show that I am in full control of my ideas and thoroughly organised in how I'm developing this project, which is incredibly important to do to achieve the higher grades. Now I go into further experimentation and further analysis, using lino printing and collage, mixing two mediums which I had previously used. I then begin to develop rayograms, which are essentially prints into photo paper with the use of light. So with these pieces of acetate, I laid them over photograph paper and shone light on them for so many seconds depending on what I need, because as you can see this one was double exposed, which meant it had a different amount of light compared to this one, which was a single exposed image. And it essentially makes a print onto the photograph paper ready to be developed. I then began to edit my photography, create my own drawings, look at the kind of language that I found within my journal, as I previously showed in the last section of the video, analysing the kind of language I have used and why I've used it and what that actually says about my mental state. And apparently I am attracted to tragedy, which doesn't surprise me. I am an art student. I continued with acrylic painting and watercolour painting, combining the two, and then developing further video edits to create painted beating hearts and a painted crying woman. And all of these videos are available on my other channel, which was set up for A-level. As you can see, throughout all of this there was consistent context. There was context on most pages, and that is because thorough research is needed for any project when you're putting it practically in real life. You need to have a full understanding of what you're creating and why you're creating it. So this project allows us to start putting that into practice and start making use of these things. Here I interviewed an artist called Teresa Poulton. She is an artist local to Newcastle. She creates abstract geometric paintings. Another revised SOI. I revised my SOI 4 times overall before rewriting it entirely, so that it suited the project appropriately. Solving problems. Sounds really strange, but you need to have problems in your project to get the full marks, because you need to find ways of negotiating and working your way out of sticky situations. In this case, one of the problems that I had is that the printer stopped printing for me. It would print for everyone else in the college, but it wouldn't print for me. So I had to email several people in order to get it fixed, and eventually it was fixed, and but it took out a huge chunk of my time. Further contextual research, and then I begin the development of my final piece, which is all about memories in these small animatic GIFs, which you will see in my final piece video at the end of the video. These are all people in my life that have been important to me and helped create memories with me. I did a final criteria review, which I actually wrote out. I looked at the criteria sheet the way it was, and it seemed rather complicated, so I essentially translated it into normal terms and shared that out amongst the class so that we could all use that instead of having to translate every single time we read it. Video editing, as I was saying about development, video editing is really good for development because you can print screen everything and show your process really easily. Here you have more context and video editing, artist research, and planning the placement of my final exhibition. I had the first screen as soon as you walk into the building, which was a nice place to be. My final SOI completely resolved with bibliography and Harvard referencing. Harvard referencing is something that I'm going to have to use throughout my time at university, and I had to use towards the end of A-level. That particular system of referencing is the one that most people use in academic journals and academic writing. So it's important to start using it now, although not entirely necessary. I evaluated my role in the exhibition, my final major project itself, the foundation year, the final piece, and the exhibition evaluation, as well as another health and safety, to show that I fully considered everything, and even when I encountered new problems there were more solutions to them. These are photographs from the final exhibition, which I showed the Mayor of Durham round along with Shauna, another girl on the course. And this here is the programme, Paradigm. That was our exhibition. And in it you can see all of us, our memories over the year, and our artist statements, which are within the Unit 3 and 7. And that is the final major project. I hope you found that useful. One of the most important parts of any art project is a research journal or a blog, something that you can use to show all of the rough working that you don't necessarily want to put in your sketchbook. In my case, I used a research journal in every project, listing websites here, and different quick notes that I left on my desk while I was thinking and planning. I looked at different points of consideration here for my project, including the effects of insomnia, does sleep impact emotional health, and I looked at different TED Talks and analysed them to help grasp and have a better understanding of my project and where it was going, as well as improving contextual research. I also listed out my own personal aims and intentions and notations of the things that I was going to write in my book, including my roles in exhibition, different mind maps, health and safety, things to remember, different forms of research that weren't necessarily relevant to the project but were relevant enough that I wanted to include them somewhere, such as sleep being a form of torture in past cultures and even in America. Until I believe it was 2009, it was legally fine to deprive someone of sleep for torture in an interrogation with the FBI. These were my word dumps, where I just put random things onto the page to get all of my ideas out, analysing my character and designing my character without intentionally doing so, just sketching to myself different ideas, different mark-making techniques. All of this is very loose, and none of it is very particularly academic and accurate. This is where all of the ideas, all of the planning, anything that's not necessarily pretty but is planned. Like here I was looking at the direction of the project before I mind mapped it in my book, so that my mind mapping in my book would look more impressive and be more accurate. Like here, this is a mind map I did not even include in my book, but it was important for me to consider so that I knew the direction of my own project, and that was what is my insomnia. And here I've got various points about what it means to have insomnia, to have sleep deprivation. Health and safety notes so that I can type them up later with more accuracy. Failed experiments are in here as well, so that I don't have to continually analyse every single piece. Even though I have to analyse every single piece that's in my book, I don't necessarily have to include everything in my main sketchbook, or books in my case. The story I was planning, the different printing styles, more mind mapping, everything. There was a lot of mind mapping because that's how I think. I think in very visual ways. Without mind mapping or drawing, I have an inability to organise and plan myself. So that's my personal technique, is to use that. Other people's techniques might be orally describing things, in which case they might want to record videos of themselves talking about their ideas to put on blogs, which will improve their grades and also help them organise the direction of their project. Pseudo hallucinations right there. Planning the pages of my book, which was originally going to be my final piece, hence why I've got a lot of character design in here and development of that sort. I was analysing different pictures from adverts. I decided I wanted to make my character look as drug addicted as possible. and also childlike, because people tend to respond to big eyes a lot more. It's why Disney use big eyes all the time. Objects and their meanings, because in different cultures everything means something else. So what might be seen as something quite positive in the UK might not be in other cultures. For example, white often is considered to mean purity, honesty and goodness in the UK, but in Cherokee, white is the colour of evil and black is the colour of good. So it really depends on where you are as to what everything means, and that's something you have to consider when you're creating any kind of artwork or design, depending on where it's going to be placed. These are different explanations for myself, to help me understand myself, where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do. Past criteria, merit criteria, distinction criteria. That was me working it out in simplistic terms so that it would be easier. Memorable quotes. It kind of looks like a cow, doesn't it? But it's actually quite a dark quote. Those who are dead are not dead, they are just living in my head. And it was the idea of my memories completely crushing me more than anything else. Sorry, I lost the camera battery there. So I'm going to continue until it runs out again. Analysing notes from my interviews that I took with artists. It's good to have the first-hand in there as much as possible. First-hand information is always more valuable than the second-hand research. So if you can put the two together, that's ideal. But if you have to have more of one than the other, have more primary than secondary research, the same as with any other project that you'll do at A-level or foundation level. Creating my final piece, planning it, research notes, basic design, bibliography for my research journal, which not a lot of people do, but I personally see it as something that helps show that you're prepared academically to continue with this, and a final personal evaluation with a little goodbye pseudo-hallucination. Aww. So that was my research journal. And I was actually more happy with that than my actual sketchbook. So weird.